Released December 3rd, 2020, by developer still running and publisher Merge Games, Morbid, the Seven Acolytes is an isometric Souls-like horror punk action RPG which takes inspiration from both H.P. Lovecraft-style horror and acclaimed horror film director David Cronenberg-styled gore. Morbid truly lives up to its name in this pixel art gore fest. Thanks to the publishers for the review key. You are the last striver of Dibron, who has trained all your life to defeat the Seven Acolytes and release the kingdom from their tyrannical clutches. On your journey through this gothic RPG, you'll face off against some of the most gruesome and disturbing-looking creatures I've ever seen, from the regular foot soldiers to some truly unique, grotesque bosses and sub-bosses. Morbid offers a fair amount of lore, but in a very vague way. While going through the world of Morbid, you'll find books strewn about, various NPCs, and even information given through the loading screens will help give you some insight. This story, however, is presented more in the background, as the gameplay here is key. The audio in Morbid is quite impressive, with fully orchestrated music that presents a score that leaves you asking for nothing more. The overall sound presentation, including all the sound effects, all add to this experience. The omission of voice acting was unfortunate though. I strongly believe that a title like this could have benefited from some A-list, even really good B-movie acting. This would have helped not only with the story delivery, but to add a bit of personality and character to the experience. The visuals are good for what they are, and although I'm clearly an old school gamer, I'm not one of those who are enamored with this current trend of retro pixel art aesthetics. To be quite honest, it's getting kinda old, no pun intended. But like it or not, I try not to be biased. When it's done well enough, it's done well enough, and here in Morbid, the Seven Acolytes, it's certainly done well enough. I have a small peeve, however, and it's nothing personal, but I said it in my Orion and Nanui reviews. I do not like to see characters running sideways in a 2.5D or 3D game. Now, while your striver does not exactly do this in Morbid, as she does turn her back to the camera, when it's time to strike, she reverts to doing it sideways. Morbid makes sure to live up to its name. This game could have easily been called Disgusting the Seven Acolytes or Disturbing the Seven Acolytes, but I guess Morbid had a better ring to it. All the imagery here screams Lovecraft, and maybe a bit of John Carpenter when I think about it. Other than the creatures and NPCs, everything is just downright bizarre. The plants, the items you collect, an option for health restoration requires you to eat something called disgusting gruel. It's just all around nasty, but if this is your thing, if it does not bother you, then hey, make yourself at home, why don't you? Everything I say in my reviews are my opinion and mine alone, and I'm of the opinion that Morbid is one really vague game, not just in its story, but also in its overall gameplay. You're left to figure out a lot of things for yourself, at least I was. Like I told you, there are hints about, but still very vague ones. Let's talk about side quests. Other than not knowing if they're just side quests or a part of your main progression, which is something I had to figure out by myself, there's also no map, no real direction as to what needs to be done next. Where the acolytes are located, nothing really. So, this leads to forced exploration, backtracking, and sometimes a huge guessing game. This isn't necessarily a bad thing and probably should be expected from a Souls-like RPG, but know this, if you prefer to have your hands held or clear objectives, look elsewhere. The difficulty is what I have come to expect from this genre. However, and this is a big however, to those intimidated by the term Souls-like, fret not. This isn't the hardest out there. It looks like the devs gave a crap whether or not you completed it, because while it is challenging, there is some breathing room, especially with the normal enemies. Most that I have encountered have this easy to figure out exploit. Simply don't attack them head on. Time your heavy attacks, use your dash or roll button, and they'll be done in no time. The bosses pose a bigger threat, but still not impossible or impassable. I'm comfortable with the upgrade system, very satisfying actually. Other than temporary boosts that allow you to add fire, ice, poison, electricity and other things to each weapon, melee or projectile, you have permanent boosts that come in the form of runes and blessings. You can add runes, which are easily procured through defeating lesser enemies and cracking open crates. These will permanently increase your abilities. Then there are the blessings, which offer a variety of boosts like increased health, increased stamina, and so on. So in true RPG fashion, you may start off a loser, but that W isn't far off should you stick it out. It's also important to create a system where you're always aware of your health, stamina, ammo, and sanity. Should you begin to lose your sanity, you may or may not notice its effects. Your damage will be compromised, among other things, and you'll start hallucinating, Eternal Darkness style. Well, maybe not as extreme, but you will begin to encounter specters which don't normally show up. As for your guns, well, it'll always bother me in games where your melee attacks are more powerful than your firearms. Like the way melee attacks work in a Call of Duty game. Ridiculous, really. But I guess since we're not fighting people, but some hideous creatures from wherever, and all the weapons can be upgraded, I can give Morbid a pass on that. Morbid the Seven Acolytes is a solid entry to the already oversaturated RPG Souls-like and even roguelite and like genres. It doesn't do anything particularly wrong and feels like a refined, well-thought-out experience, with good controls, solid pixel art visuals, a great score, and a decent story, even if it does take a backseat due to its presentation style. I'm going to have to say, if this genre is your thing, you'll have a good time with Morbid. If it's not, then I'm going to have to also say, this isn't a bad place to start either, as it isn't the most hardcore in its class. This is just one man's opinion. Ultimately, it's your choice. AAA games are all well and good, but many times, if you'd like a truly unique experience, one off the beaten path, then the indie scene is where you want to be. Show your support for independent game developers. Most, if not all, indie games are priced relatively low. Some are even free with the option to donate, so there's really no reason to pass. Thank you for watching. If you like my content, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Let's say I pissed you off though, then we all know where to find the various hate buttons, don't we? Either way, I won't hold it against you. Our game is never over.